Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Let's go ahead and wrap up the month of February. And unfortunately, February might have been the worst reading month I have had since I started keeping track of my reading in 2019. Of the 5 books I finished, I gave 3 of them a 2-star ranking, which means I didn't really like them. I only gave 1 book a 3-star, and I did give 1 book a 4-star ranking, which was kind of my only saving grace, because even the 3-star book, I have a lot of mixed feelings on. So let's go ahead and jump into what those books were. And I started the month off with Gunmetal Gods by Zamil Akhtar. And this is a book that I know a lot of people really like, and after I put out my review for it, I found out that it's actually a much more mixed opinions about this book. Basically, how I felt about this book was it had a very interesting magic system, and it had some interesting cosmic horror elements, kind of Lovecraftian horror, and the cultural differences that are brought into the book. You know, most fantasy is very European centric, and to get a Eastern kind of style fantasy was very refreshing. But outside of those elements, I did not really like much of the book. I thought it had a lot of the same tones between both the characters. I don't think the storytelling was all that great. And unfortunately, it just didn't work for me, which, you know, is bound to happen. Not every book is for everybody. Part of me still kind of wants to continue on with the series because I do think it has a lot of potentials. I just think that the elements that I wanted out of it and that it might deliver later on into the series, which are specifically the cosmic horror and the magical elements of it, just weren't as prevalent in the first book as I would have liked. And that maybe in the second, and I think there's 2 more books, so the second and the third book, maybe it delivers a little bit more on. If you have read this book, let me know if that's what happens or if it kind of just stays more of the same, because if so, I just think it'll be a series that, you know, I dipped my toe into the water, and unfortunately, it wasn't for me. And I'm not sure if I said this, but Gunmetal Gods was one of the 2-star reads that I had for this month. And next up is Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. And this is the 3-star book that I had for this month, and it is also a book that, man, the first 40 to 60% of this book was fantastic. This book was on pace to be an extremely high-ranking 4-star book for me, and then the rest of the book happened, and it cratered very hard. I still think I ended up liking this book. I still honestly really have mixed feelings on it. The first part of it is just so good. It's hard for me to not say I didn't like it and that I didn't enjoy my time with it. I just think it went into a direction I didn't want. I also think that the story suffered from some confusing jumping back and forth between a lot of different timelines and also not knowing what it wanted to be. I think unfortunately this book tried to be 3 different types of books in one, where I think S.A. Barnes had 3 book ideas where she could have branched off into 3 separate novels and had 3 really good books, but unfortunately none of the ideas were fleshed out enough in Dead Silence to warrant it being something that I really recommend to a lot of people. Like I said, that first 60% is so good. And if I had gotten more of those elements, which I think she's actually writing a book called Ghost Ships or something, and I think it might be more of that kind of element, it makes me kind of want to give it a shot, because if that's the case, man, it will be so good. The creepy, suspenseful feeling that happens early on in this book is so good, but it just loses so much steam after that like halfway point that, you know, just completely derailed my enjoyment of the book. Like I said, still gave it 3 stars. It's one of those ones where I bet people who really like this book love the twist that happens, and people like me who really like the first part of the book don't like the twist that happens. And so you might need to look into that one a little bit more yourself if you want to decide whether or not to read it. After Dead Silence, I jumped into technically a novella by Adrian Tuskowski. I did not get that right, but it's pretty close. And that is Elder Race. I know he's an extremely popular author here on BookTube, and I haven't read any of his big popular things yet. I've only read 1 other book by him, and I can't remember what it's called, but I read Elder Race by him, and unfortunately this was another 2-star ranking for me. This was a story that I think the premise was pretty interesting, but that's really all it had going for it. I didn't really care about any of the characters. I didn't care about the conflict, anything. I don't know. I think, like I said, the premise was there. The premise was cool. I just guess I didn't like the way it was executed. And that's just, once again, that's just going to happen sometimes when you are reading a wide variety of books and you don't do a whole lot of research. Like for me, I just kind of get a very general premise of a book, and this, based off that, I decide whether or not I want to read it. And I go in as blind as I can because I think it's just the best way to do it. And unfortunately, that means things like this are going to happen where the general premise sounds good, but the actual execution just doesn't work for me. Basically, you have a mix of a super primitive society and a super hyper advanced society and how they kind of mix together. And that premise to me sounds super fascinating. And unfortunately, just the way the story went, I just didn't care. This is a book that I have already forgotten major details from. It's not like I sped read this or didn't give it like the attention it deserves. It's just one of those books that is extremely unmemorable outside of that basic premise. This is going to be one of those books where I'm going to be able to tell somebody the general premise and then not any of the finer details in like a year from now. It's just going to be one of those things that was in and out, which is unfortunate. This is by no means me swearing off him as an author. I think he has a whole lot to offer. There's no way so many people love so many of his books. There's no way I'm just going to be the one who doesn't like some of it. So maybe Children of Time is something I'll tackle next from him. I know he has a fantasy series as well that I've heard some good things about, so that might be something. It's like a 10-book series though, so not sure if I want to do that at the same time as I'm reading Malazan, but you never know, it's a possibility. I followed Elder Race up with my sci-fi read of the month, and that was Blindsight by Peter Watts. And unfortunately, this was another 2-star read for me, and I think I'm definitely in the minority here. I think most people really like this, and there are some very interesting concepts in here, mostly surrounding about the idea of consciousness and like what is intelligence, and there's some interesting theories in here that I honestly had never heard of, and so that aspect of it I liked, but nothing else about it I did. I didn't like the delivery of it, I didn't like really the characters, I didn't really like the setting. I was going into this expecting more of a first contact story. And while that is definitely an aspect of the story, it's not the aspect of it that it focused on the most for me. It really focused on that consciousness aspect, which is just one of those theoretical discussions that personally I don't find all that entertaining. I can see why some people would. I absolutely see why some people, this breaks some people's brains and like opens up another door that they didn't know was there. I get it, I totally do. It's just not one that opened for me. It's just a door that I don't care about. Maybe, I don't know. I think that's maybe the best way for me to look at this book is I just didn't care about the concepts in depth enough to read a book that focused on them as heavily as it did. And like I said, there are some very interesting aspects here, but I was expecting more generic, not generic, but a more straightforward first contact story, and that's not what it is to me. So unfortunately, this was another 2-star read, and at this point in the month, I was super discouraged, was super let down about what was happening with my reading. If you watch my TBRs, you will notice that this book was not on it, but I just kind of on a whim wanted to read something different, really wanted to just change it up, and so I actually ended up reading Kujo by Stephen King, and I'm so glad I did because this was a 4-star read for me. I enjoyed this book immensely, and to me, this is like the antithesis of what people talk about when they talk about Stephen King, where it's such slice of life, and that yes, there is like a main story that's happening, but it is definitely not even the main focus in this book. I think most people know the general premise of Kujo. There's a rabid Saint Bernard that is, attacking people. But that is such a small aspect of the book, while it is always there, lurking in the background, part of the story. This is really just us being in a town, and it felt like I was there. I felt like I was just there, transported into Castle Rock? I think it's Castle Rock. Dyslexia is making me doubt myself here, but it was just a fantastic time just being there. I just felt like so connected to the town and the world, and it just felt so real. And this is only my second Stephen King novel. I'll definitely be reading more from him. He's definitely an author that I have wanted to prioritize in the past and just haven't really, but Kujo was just a fantastic book. So it was, something that I am very much glad I read. It definitely kind of turned this month around. Some of the things that I'm not done yet, I have been enjoying, but of everything I finished this month, this is by far the best thing I have finished. Mentioning some things very quickly, I did my TBR, so they're in there as well, but some things that I'm still working on that I definitely will not get finished in the month of February is Dead House Gates by Stephen Erickson. This is book 2 of the Milestone Book of the Fallen, and I'm like, 15% of the way in there. It's been good so far. I don't feel like I'm as planted in the world yet as I would like to be, but I think that's kind of to be expected with Malazan, and so I'm ready to just kind of settle in and get through that. I'm also about 20% of the way done with Return to Adan by Philip Chase. This has been great. I know I was very negative about this month, but I have thoroughly been enjoying this as well. So this has been great. I just didn't finish it. I didn't get enough of it in for me to really count it towards the month of February. So this might be hopefully a March finished book, if not maybe the month after that. I'm definitely taking my time with it. The problem is I'm reading it before I go to bed or while I'm in bed, and I have been so tired recently. My new workouts have been kicking my butt, and so I've been getting like a couple Kindle pages in and then falling asleep. So I'd probably just need to start reading it outside of bedtime, but that's my preferred time to read my physical books. So we'll see how far I get through that. But like I said, I am very much enjoying this one. And the last thing that I am working on is Shortcomings. I started this today, and this is actually something I will probably finish by the time February is actually over. I think there's like 3 or 4 days left in the month. And so this is obviously very short and something that I will get through quickly. I just haven't dedicated any time to it until today. So this is the only other thing that has a contention of being my book of the month, because I will at least finish it this month. So it'll either be this or Kujo. My guess is it'll probably be Kujo because I did have such a good time with this, but we'll see how this goes. Okay, and now let's quickly switch over to manga. I'll go over this very quickly. I'm still reading My Hero, Black Clover, Berserk, Vinland Saga, Boruto. I'm rereading Dragon Ball Z, and I'm still paused on One Piece, and I unfortunately DNF'd a series. I read 3 volumes of, what is it, Demon Destruction something. I think that's like name everyone calls it is like DDDD, 4Ds. And yeah, it was another slice of life. I had somebody recommend it to me, and unfortunately it just wasn't for me. So I did read some of that, like I said, 3 volumes, but that will be the end of that for me. I'm caught up on everything that is on here except for One Piece, obviously, because I'm kind of pausing to follow along with Murphy Napier, Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, Philip Chase, and Alan from the Library of Alexandria. They are all doing a read along, so I kind of want to wait till they catch up to where I'm at and follow along with that discussion, because I have followed along with Murphy and Philip's manga in the past, and it's always been a lot of fun to watch their videos. So that's kind of where I am with that. Quickly on the movie/TV front, I am almost done with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think we are on the last season, episode 15, so we've got like 6-ish episodes left, I think, so we're getting very close to the end there, which is exciting. Also sad, I didn't think this was a series I was going to enjoy. When my girlfriend asked me to watch it with her, I said no, and then I ended up watching the first episode with her and told her that she couldn't watch it without me because that's how much I enjoyed it from the start. So it's kind of one of those bittersweet feelings that it is going to be over, but I'm also excited to, move on to watch something new with her. But like I said, very much have enjoyed Buffy so far. I have also been watching the live action Yu Yu Hakusho show on Netflix. It has been fine so far. I'm not really a big fan of live action adaptations, honestly. I think a lot of the things that make manga and anime great get so lost in translation when it comes to a live action format. I feel that way with a lot of fantasy as well. I think most fantasy would be better off being in an animated format than live action a lot of times. I think so much of the charm and the magic of those kinds of worlds is lost when you go to live action. They just can't do the same justice, and that is especially true to me for manga and anime. But like I said, it's been decent. It's just, I don't know, some of it's just missing, but it's fine. If you love the series, the anime series, I think you should definitely give it a watch. Just make sure you don't listen to it in English. The dub over it is not very good. And the only movie I watched this month is actually my favorite movie of all time, and that is Pacific Rim. And I know it is by no means a perfect movie, but it is just, I mean, how do you not just love giant monsters fighting giant robots? It's just, I don't know. It's been my favorite movie since I saw it in theaters. I even have like the novelization of it somewhere over here. It's just something I really enjoy. It's on Netflix, so if you have Netflix, you can go ahead and watch it. I have already watched it. I'll probably watch it again. It's just, I don't know. It's just something about it. It just, my lizard brain just quite enjoys the giant monsters and the giant robots fighting each other. So. And on the video game front, I really haven't been playing too much video games. I've been playing Genshin Impact and Counter-Strike 2. That's really about it. Not too much time invested there. I need to go ahead and play the Pokemon DLC that I bought and have yet to play. I beat the first half of it, but I need to go ahead and beat the second half that came out not too long ago. So I need to go ahead and jump on that. But that was my month of February. Like I said, a rather disappointing reading front for the books that I have finished. Some of the stuff I have not finished yet has been really good, so it's kind of a weird month for me there. But let me know about your month, what you read, if you had any duds, any studs, let me know, and as always, have a good one.